Space is the place. So you want to get to space. Have you tried rockets? Rockets use fuel and engines to create thrust, which propels them forward. When a fuel tank is empty, it is dropped to stay as lightweight as possible, allowing the rocket to go even faster. These tanks, as well as other expendable parts of a rocket, are called stages. Different stages do different things. Often the first stage is very powerful, with just enough fuel to get the vehicle through the atmosphere. The second stage usually has a low-thrust engine that, while not as powerful, is more fuel efficient. After dropping the heavier first stage and leaving the atmosphere, the second stage engine pushes the much lighter second stage to orbital speed. On a flight to space, the final stage parachutes back down to the surface, ideally in one piece. Welcome to the launch pad. As you embark on your journey into rocketry, it's important to get all the crashing out of your system here in the simulator. It really cuts down on the awkward phone calls. Today, you'll be launching into the virtual skies over KSC, where you'll learn how to control a rocket. Let's learn how to rotate the flight camera. That way, you can see the launch from your favorite angle. Great! You can also zoom the camera in and out. Nice! Go ahead and pick your favorite view for this launch. Your rocket is ready for launch. Every good launch starts with a big green button and lots of fire. Most bad launches do too, actually. Looking good! Ascend to 1,000 meters, and then we'll learn some controls. Okay, you're a kilometer up. You can still crash, but you'll have more time to correct your course if you start pointing at the ground. Let's learn some rocket controls. When flying a rocket or a plane, we have specific terms for moving. Pitch tilts your rocket's nose up and down. Nice pitch! Now pitch up until you're flying straight up. Let's move on. Yaw steers your rocket left and right. Try it now. Now yaw to the left to excellent. Now for the final control. Roll rotates your rocket clockwise and counterclockwise. Try it now. That's the basics of rocket flight. Feel free to experiment with the controls. We can move on when you're ready. So you want to get to space. It It's time to make a rocket. A simple rocket requires 4 crucial components: a command module, fuel tank, engine, and parachute. Let's start by learning how to add a command module. A command module allows us to control our vessel. As long as there is at least 1 command module on board, our rocket will be operational. This rocket will use a command pod, which can be manned by a Kerbal and is located in the pods category. Or multiple Kerbals. It all depends on the crew capacity of the part. For this lesson, we're going to make a small rocket, so we need a small command pod. Let's add this one. Great! It doesn't look like much, but it's a promising start. The next thing our rocket needs is a fuel tank. Fuel, or propellant, is an expendable resource used to power our vessels. Without fuel, we won't be going anywhere, let alone space. Let's look at the small fuel tanks. How about that one? Rocketry Weekly calls it good enough. How exciting. Notice the part is once again attached to your cursor. If you place your cursor near the bottom of your command pod, you'll see it snap into place. Then left-click to attach it. Now that's beginning to look like a rocket. Well, almost. We need an engine. Here at the KSP, we have 4 different types of engines: launcher, sustainer, orbital, and deep space engines. Now let's add the sustainer engine to the fuel tank. Excellent! Our rocket is looking pretty great. We just need one final touch. As is, our rocket can absolutely take flight, but if we want our pilot to survive the landing, we need to attach a parachute to the top of their command pod. Our 1 Kerbal rocket doesn't weigh much, so we only need an extra small parachute. Let's go with that one. Now, all we need to do is put it on top of the command. Congratulations! You've just built a rocket. Are you sure you haven't done this before? As you start to build rockets, you'll want to see your designs from other angles. Let's learn how to manipulate the camera inside the vehicle assembly building. First, let's rotate. Nice! Now let's zoom the camera in and out. Great! Now let's pan the camera up and down. You can also focus your camera at a specific part. If you want to view your rocket from the top, front, or sides, switch to blueprint mode. You can change the camera's direction by selecting different sides of the view cube. If you ever get lost in the VAB, you can always reset the camera. Nice! Now you can get at those hard-to-reach parts of your rocket. Your rocket's ready. Let's take it out for a little hop. Let's move this rocket to a launch pad. Welcome to the launch pad. Today you'll be flying straight up. Your rocket should do fine without any steering inputs, but if things get out of line somehow, feel free to intervene. You've cleared the launch tower and your flight is underway. Let's learn about staging. Rockets are constructed in sections called stages. Each stage is designed for a different part of a mission. When a stage completes its job, it's dropped to shed weight. On your right, you'll find the staging stack. It displays all of the functions contained in each stage. Every time you select the Go button, you'll activate a new stage, starting from the bottom of the stack. Each stage's fuel supply is shown on a bar next to the stage. Your active stage, Stage 1, still has a little fuel in it. When it goes dry, you'll drop that stage by selecting Go. Your rocket needs all its parts. Please try again. Your rocket's ready. Let's take it out for a little hop. Let's move this rocket to a launch pad. Welcome to the launch pad. Today, you'll be flying straight up. Your rocket should do fine without any steering inputs. But if things get out of line somehow, feel free to intervene. You've cleared the launch tower, and on your right, each stage's fuel supply is shown on a bar next to the stage. Your first stage is out of fuel, and all it is doing is slowing you down. To drop that weight, you're going to activate your next stage. That will activate a decoupler, which will drop your empty. Ready? Hit Go to lose that mass. Congratulations! You're nearly to space, and your next set of fuel tanks are empty. Now is a good time to drop them. Activate the next. Your capsule will now continue coasting up. All that's left to do is gaze back down at Kerbin and wonder if you remembered to lock your car. Nice work! Your capsule has a lot of momentum. If you're curious how high up you are, take a look at your altimeter. You're so high that you can see the curve of the horizon. Rocketry involves a lot of waiting between the cool explosions. You can speed up time by selecting the time warp controls at the bottom of your screen. Check out your altimeter. You're about to start falling back down. Let's slow down and enjoy the view. Great job. You're now a master of time. Try not to use this new power for evil. What goes up must come down. Wind resistance will slow down your capsule's descent, but not enough to prevent it from turning into a bunch of tiny capsules when it lands. That's why we've attached a parachute. If you deploy your parachute too early, it'll be torn off. If you deploy it too late, you'll do some unplanned underground exploration. The sweet spot for Kerbin is between 20,000 and 2,000 meters. Okay, you're low enough to activate the final stage that contains your parachute. Hit Go to pop your chute. Nice work! The parachute will trail your capsule for a bit without fully opening. Once you've slowed down enough, it'll open all the way by itself. Your parachute is now fully deployed and slowing the capsule to a safe velocity. Congratulations! If this were real, you'd find celebratory snacks in the... If you deploy your... Okay, hit Go to pop your chute. Nice work! The parachute will trail your capsule for a bit without fully opening. Once you've slowed down enough, it'll open all the way by itself. Your parachute is now fully deployed and slowing the capsule to a safe velocity. Missing the ground. If you want to visit space for more than a couple of minutes, you'll need to get to orbit. An object is in orbit when it's moving sideways so quickly that even as gravity causes it to fall, it keeps missing the ground. As long as that object isn't slowed down by anything, it follows the same path every time it goes around the body it's orbiting, forever. If that object is a Kerbal, it is recommended that they bring lots of snacks. So since your goal is to move horizontally at a high speed, why not launch sideways? On Kerbin, the atmosphere is like a thick soup. You waste a lot of fuel trying to fly through it horizontally. By launching vertically, you cut through the thickest part of the atmosphere as quick as possible. Most orbital rockets begin tilting toward the horizon soon after they leave the launch pad. This maneuver, called a gravity turn, uses the planet's gravity to turn the ship and reduces the amount of fuel needed to achieve a stable orbit. When launching near the equator, your gravity turns should point toward the east, since your vehicle gets a free boost from the planet's rotation. Thanks, planet! Once a vehicle is moving quickly enough that its arc will take it above the atmosphere, it shuts down its engines and coasts to space. Once it nears the top of that arc, the vehicle needs to fire its engines a second time to keep itself from falling back down to the planet. Doing this turns that arc into a nice big circle. Congratulations! You've missed the ground. When you're making a rocket, it's often easiest to work top to bottom, tailoring each stage to carry the weight of everything above it. To give you a head start, I've already placed an upper stage, perfect for maneuvering in the vacuum of space. It could use another, more powerful stage to push it up to space from Kerbin's surface. Let's turn this vehicle into a multi-stage rocket. Anytime we intend to drop an empty stage after using all of its fuel, we connect it to the stage above it using a decoupler. A decoupler contains explosive bolts that, when activated by a staging action, eject the attached stage away from the rest of the vehicle. Add that decoupler to the bottom of... We need to attach a larger, more powerful lower stage to the bottom of your rocket. To keep things simple, I've whipped up a new lower stage in another workspace. You can bring saved vehicles and other sub-assemblies into an in-progress workspace by merging it. Let's merge my lower stage into this VAB workspace. Out in the real world, this list would show all of your saved workspaces. Here in the simulator, I'm only showing you the lower stage you need to... Now that the lower stage has been merged into your current workspace, you can see it next to the upper stage. Select the lower stage and connect it to the... Perfect! Merging is a very powerful tool. Anytime you want to reuse a particular booster, lander, or other element from an existing rocket, merging saves you the hassle of making the same thing over and over. Space rockets sometimes need an extra boost. In a rare case of rocket scientists naming something well, these additional rocket engines are called boosters. Boosters are attached to the sides of a vehicle to keep them out of the way of the main engines. Solid fuel rockets make great boosters. They produce a very high thrust for a short time. We'll start by attaching 4 radial decouplers that will eject the spent boosters when they're empty. To make sure that these decouplers are evenly spaced and aligned with one another, you'll be using the symmetry tool. Great! Now when you place a part on one side of your rocket, 3 more evenly spaced duplicates will appear around the rocket. Go ahead and add 4 radial decouplers. Good! Now attach it as shown. Perfect! Now you've got 4 radial decouplers exactly where they need to be. Let's attach those solid fuel boosters. Since you're still in 4x symmetry mode, simply attach this booster to one of the decouplers you just placed. Great job! You've finished your orbital rocket. You can symmetrically place up to 8 parts at once, a feat that could until now only be achieved by certain sea creatures. Before you launch a rocket, you need to plan the order of your staging events. Nobody wants to start out their flight by popping their parachute, right? Most parts that can be staged are automatically assigned to stages. Their activation order can be seen in the staging stack. You can change when staging events occur by moving them between stages. You can also add, remove, and reorder stages. Best of all, you can do this in both the VAB and in flight. The staging order begins at the bottom of the staging stack. You want your boosters and main engine to fire together for maximum thrust. The solid fuel boosters are currently in the second stage. If we don't change anything, the boosters will ignite late and detach themselves at the same time. This would be embarrassing for everybody, so let's move the boosters down to stage 1. Your solid fuel boosters burn very hard and very fast, so they will run out of fuel first. Even though your main engine and boosters will activate at the same time, you want to drop the empty boosters before you drop your main engine. You'll add a new stage above stage 1 to do one thing. Activate the radial decouplers to jettison your spent boosters. Now move all 4 radial decouplers from stage 4 to your new stage 2. All done! Your remaining stages are set up so that stage 4 will activate your orbital stage's engine. Stage 5 will detach the orbital stage's fuel tank when it's empty. And stage 6 will deploy your landing parachute. Thanks to you, this rocket is ready to fly. All right, we're ready to light this candle. In this flight, you're going all the way to orbit. I'll walk you through the process of launching, executing a gravity turn to get moving sideways, coasting to orbital altitude, and doing a final burn at the top of your arc to establish a stable orbit. Before we begin, let's talk about the nav ball. The nav ball shows your vehicle's orientation relative to the horizon. The blue half of the ball represents the sky, and the brown half represents the ground. The level indicator at the center shows your vehicle's orientation. When you turn, the ball turns. When you roll, the ball rolls. Assuming you want your rocket pointed at the sky, you'll want to see lots of blue on the nav ball. If you get confused, remember this rhyme. If the nav ball's brown, you're going down. At launch, you want all your engines at maximum thrust, which means you need to set your throttle at 100%. Your solid fuel boosters are way ahead of you on this. They have no setting other than full throttle, and they can't be shut off once they're lit. Once you hit the go button, they'll go full tilt until they run out of fuel. Still, your main engine's throttle is in your control. You can see your main throttle here. Left shift gradually increases your throttle. Left control gradually decreases your throttle. Z and X instantly set your throttle to 100 or 0% respectively. Your fuel levels are visible within the staging stack. Right now, you can see that your main engine and 4 boosters are all topped off and ready to rumble. It's time to go. At the start, all you need to do is fly straight up. I'll check back in with you once those boosters are empty. Good luck! All right, the solid fuel boosters are empty. Let's drop them. It's time to start your gravity turn. A gravity turn uses the pull of the planet's gravity to help bend your vertical ascent into a horizontal arc. It's the first step to entering orbit. For our first flight to orbit, we're going to start our gravity turn up to where the air is thin, at an altitude of around 10,000 meters. To show you where to aim your rocket, I've placed a target marker on your nav ball. First, we need to get to 10,000 meters. You're going to yaw towards the east so that the target marker is in the center of the nav ball. Your vessel and nav ball should look like this example video if you're performing the gravity turn correctly. Way to make Kerbin's gravity work for you. You're now on track to establish an orbit. Every stage has its time, and this one was a little too... We're ready to light this candle. In this flight, you're going all the way to... Before we begin, at launch, you can see your main throttle here. Your fuel levels are visible within the staging stack. Right now, you can see that your main engine and 4 boosters are all topped off and ready to rumble. It's time to go. At the start, all you need to do is fly straight up. I'll check back in with you once those boosters are empty. Good luck! All right, the solid fuel boosters are empty. Let's drop. It's time to start your gravity turn. A gravity turn uses the pull of the planet's gravity. You're going to yaw towards the east so that the target marker is in the center of the nav ball. Your vessel and nav ball should look like this example video if you're performing the gravity turn correctly. Way to make Kerbin's gravity work for you. You're now on track to establish an orbit. Your current stage's fuel is empty. Let's drop it and activate your deep space and great job! Your rocket is on its way to orbit. As you gain experience, you can make your gravity turns more efficient by starting to tilt your rocket soon after liftoff. Adjusting course with a series of small corrections instead of one big one will leave you with a lot more fuel when you get to orbit. Turning immediately after launch requires a very stable rocket, so if you ever have trouble keeping the pointy end up, you can try the simplified wait and turn method we use today. Right now, we're on a ballistic trajectory. If no further adjustments are made, your rocket will eventually fall back down to the ground. Our objective is to turn this arc into an orbit. The process of turning your trajectory into a circular orbit is called circularization. Partial credit to the rocket people on that one. It does have the word circle in it, but it's really hard to say. When planning and executing orbital maneuvers, you'll want to switch to map view, where you can see every part of your current trajectory. The blue arc passing through your vehicle is its current trajectory, the path your rocket will follow if you don't touch the controls anymore. Our goal is to make that arc into a circular orbit. After you've coasted nearly to the top of this arc, you're going to point forward, and then you're going to ignite your engine. If you time this burn right, you'll never quite get to the top of the arc, as it'll keep widening in front of you until it wraps all the way around the planet. Let's break that down a little more. The top of your arc has a helpful tag in map view. It's called the apoapsis, abbreviated as AP. You're going to max out your throttle before you pass this point. We're paused at just before the apoapsis. We want to go faster in the direction we're already moving, so we need to make sure our rocket is pointed forward. There's a handy marker on your nav ball called the prograde marker. That represents your forward direction. Use the Stability Assist System, or SAS, to point your vessel at that marker. You're all lined up and ready to go. The next step is to go max throttle. It can take, once your trajectory reaches all the way around the planet, you'll see another marker on your orbit. This is the periapsis, or PE, the lowest point in your orbit. It'll always live on the opposite side of your orbit from the apoapsis, or highest point. By burning prograde near your apoapsis, you increase the altitude of your periapsis, the lowest point on your orbit. Here's the most important thing to remember about setting up an orbit above an atmosphere. Your periapsis must be higher than the atmosphere, or your rocket will start to slow down every time it dips into the upper atmosphere. On Kerbin, that means every part of your orbit must be higher than 70 kilometers. Keep your eye on your trajectory for now, and I'll tell you if your periapsis is safely out of the atmosphere. Okay, your orbit is fully out of the atmosphere. Cut the throttle. You did it! You're in orbit! This is when I'd usually tell you to look under your seat in the simulator, where you'd find a delicious celebratory treat. Sadly, since the vending machine in the astrodynamics lab broke down, it has gotten very difficult to hide snacks anywhere at KSC. Feel free to take a moment to admire your first orbit. In a way, you've given yourself a mind snack. Orbits are weird. Remember your orbiting baseball? What if you wanted to make its orbit higher? Well, it's a baseball, so grab your bat and try to hit the ball to a higher orbit. Your first thought might be to try to deflect the ball upwards. Unfortunately, hitting the ball upward bends its orbit so that it hits the ground before it can return to you. What you need to do is hit the ball in the direction it's already moving, adding to its already high velocity. Now that you've sped the ball up, why isn't it flying any higher? It just keeps whizzing by at the same height it always did. After all, I said that making it go faster would make it go higher. What gives? The ball is actually going higher, but it's going higher on the opposite side of the planet from where you're standing. You've raised its orbit, and you've learned the first lesson of orbital maneuvering. Your actions affect the opposite side of your orbit. Weird, huh? So your ball is moving faster, but it's still passing you at the same height. How do you get its orbit higher on this side of the planet? Now that you know how changes in velocity affect the other side of your orbit, you've got all you need. By adding velocity to the ball at the highest point in its orbit, you raise the lowest point in its orbit and make it circular again. An equatorial orbit is good, but if you want to travel beyond Kerbin, you will need to manipulate your orbit. Let's start with something simple, expanding an orbit. We do that by increasing the value of our apoapsis. Let's get a good view. Remember how you circularized your orbit by increasing your forward velocity? To raise your orbit, you'll just do more of the same. It's time to burn prograde. Now that we're pointed the right way, we can increase the throttle and watch our orbit expand. Ooh, cut the throttle. If you overdo it, you'll leave Kerbin's orbit entirely. Nice. That maneuver raised our orbit on the other side of Kerbin, so we will enter high orbit there. Waiting to reach a specific point can be as eventful as watching the neon stripes on your rover dry. The paint job will be worth it, but isn't it better to rush to the end? Skip ahead to the good stuff using a time warp. Like I said earlier, the highest point of our orbit is called the apoapsis. The lowest point of our orbit is known as the periapsis. By default, your camera is focused on your vessel, so if you can't see either of these points, adjust your camera. Scroll the middle mouse wheel to zoom in and out. Double-click an object to center your camera on it. Excellent! You can time warp to any position on your trajectory by selecting a point on your vehicle's current path, and then selecting Time Warp to Point. Now you're way up in the sky, so high that if you circularize your orbit now, you'll be in high orbit. Wow, the black starry void looks so small from here. From command pods to space probe cores, a lot of critical rocket parts use electric charge. You'll want to design your rocket so it can generate and store EC. Most rocket engines generate electric charge while active, but we'll still need a way to keep our batteries full while coasting between maneuvers. Solar panels convert Kerbal's light into EC for our rockets. Small solar panels can just be placed, but large solar panels are delicate and must only be deployed once we're out of the atmosphere. I've equipped this rocket with 2 deployable solar panels. Here's a hand crank. Get to work. Just kidding. There's a handy button that opens all of them with a single click. Give it a try. Great. The solar panels are now extended. Light-tracking solar panels only rotate on one axis, so we may need to reorient our ship to point them fully at the sun. Let's make sure the panels are getting direct sunlight by rolling our ship a little bit. Excellent. The solar panels are soaking up all of those sweet photons and giving our rocket some much-needed EC. You can see the status of any solar panel within the Part Manager in the Electrical Parts menu. You can either access the app directly by clicking the app button, or you can right-click a part to directly access it in the Part Manager. Getting EC is one thing, and storing it is another. Most command pods have a small battery, but many missions will call for additional EC storage. When we're traveling far from the sun or going to the dark side of a planet, more batteries means more peace of mind. At some point, the crew will run out of snacks. Did you know a Kerbal is 99.9% more likely to crash when hungry? That's when it's time to head back down to Kerbin, a planet known for its plentiful snack options. First, let's get a better view for this operation. Remember how we burned prograde to raise our orbit? To lower our orbit, we burn in the opposite direction, retrograde. SAS can really help us out here, so let's turn that on. Now flip retrograde, the opposite direction to our rocket. All right, the rocket is aligned to retrograde. Increase the throttle and burn until our trajectory is just past the atmosphere. As we decelerate, watch what's happening to our periapsis. Once it enters the atmosphere, this rocket is on a path back to the ground. Don't ease off the throttle yet, though. We're gonna keep burning until our trajectory intercepts the ground. This should give us a good idea. That's it. Let's stop our burn. Now that we're on a collision course with Kerbin, we need to turn that collision into something more survivable. This process of crashing without dying is called landing. Our upcoming stage will activate a decoupler, dropping the engine and exposing a very important heat shield. Why don't you do that now? Great! We're on our way down and our heat shield is exposed. Have you ever wondered what a marshmallow feels like when it catches on fire? You're about to find out. Orbital transfers. As you know, the faster you go, the higher your orbit gets. If you get moving fast enough, your orbit may cross the orbit of some other object, like a moon or a planet. The closest celestial body to Kerbin is the Mun. If you're looking for somewhere else to fly a rocket, the Mun is a good choice. The real trick to getting there is timing your departure so that the Mun captures your vehicle at its highest point. If you mistime your departure, you may miss the Mun entirely, which creates a lot of paperwork. Let's assume you've left at the right time and the Mun is there to meet you. As your vessel approaches the Mun, it enters a zone in which the Mun's gravitational influence on your orbit is stronger than Kerbin's. This zone is called the Mun's sphere of influence. You've had to go very quickly to escape Kerbin's gravity, much too fast for the Mun's low gravity to capture you. If you don't slow down, your vehicle will speed past the Mun and be flung farther into space. Remember what I said about paperwork? Once you're in the Mun's gravity well, the best way to slow down is to fire your engines backwards until your trajectory becomes a nice, stable orbit. Now you're a moon of the Mun! Ha! Our rocket is in orbit over Kerbin and ready to fly. The mission today is to, drumroll please, intercept and orbit the Mun. To be captured by the Mun's gravity, our vessel must cross into the Mun's sphere of influence, or SOI, the zone in which its gravity is stronger than any other celestial body around it. We're going to create a maneuver plan to figure out when and how long we need to fire our engines to intercept the Mun. Great! Now here's a new trick. We can select any object as a target in map view. Targeting gives us useful information and enables new tools. Once we've targeted a celestial body or other object in space, our maneuver will provide closest pass and plane angle information. This can be very helpful for meeting up with someone or something in space. Right now, our camera is following our vessel as it orbits Kerbin. Let's adjust our camera until we can see the Mun. Then, right-click to target it. We want to place this maneuver plan with two things in mind. First, the Mun is in motion. We can't aim our spacecraft where the Mun is right now. Instead, we have to aim where the Mun will be after our vehicle has coasted all the way from Kerbin. Second, remember how increasing velocity raises the opposite side of our orbit? Since we're placing this maneuver plan where we intend to start our burn, we should place it on the opposite side of Kerbin from where we intend to intercept the Mun. Placing a maneuver plan usually involves making a best guess and then fiddling with the maneuver until you get an intercept. Fortunately, you've got a crack navigator with you today. By my calculations, we'll want to put our maneuver here. Excellent! We've just created a maneuver plan. While we could find out if our departure timing is correct by just picking a direction and maxing the throttle, a maneuver plan tells us in advance how much delta V we'll need, how long we'll need to burn, and in what direction our vessel will need to point during the maneuver. Grab and pull the arrows to plan a burn along that direction. This maneuver is pretty simple. We want to burn prograde and expand our orbit. Nice! That maneuver event towards the end of your trajectory is exactly what we're looking for. It tells that if we execute this plan, we'll intercept the Mun. If a maneuver looks right, but we're not getting the intercept we expect, we can change the starting position of the maneuver by grabbing and dragging the middle of the maneuver plan along our orbit. It's very common to refine a maneuver plan by adjusting both the position of the maneuver and the direction of the planned burn. If we don't want to maneuver at all, we can delete the plan, either by right-clicking the gizmo and selecting delete, or through the burn timer. Maneuvers are invaluable when leaving Kerbin. Feel free to come back and practice anytime. We've got a maneuver plan that intercepts the Mun. Now we just need to execute that maneuver and fly to the Mun ourselves. Whenever we have a maneuver plan, a burn timer will appear. The timer shows you how much time is left until we need to execute the maneuver. I've paused the simulation for a moment, so this number won't count down quite yet. The timer also tells us how long we'll need to burn our engines at 100% throttle in order to complete the maneuver. Now let's take a look at the nav ball. A new marker has joined our old prograde and retrograde markers. This is called a maneuver marker, and it shows us the orientation of our planned maneuver. We'll want to make sure that this marker is in the center of our nav ball during our maneuver burn. Luckily, we can aim at this maneuver marker by selecting the maneuver button on your SAS controls. Now your vehicle is properly oriented, and through the magic of SAS and more math than I'd like to admit, our vessel is properly oriented. We're still far from our planned burn, so let's speed things up. While we could rely on our reflexes to time warp at the perfect moment, a less stressful alternative is warping to a specific point in our orbit. See this button? Select it to warp automatically to the moment before our maneuver begins. Departure burn, here we come. Great! We've exited just before our maneuver burn, and I've paused the simulation once more. After we select Continue, remember to wait until the countdown reaches 0. Then we'll go full throttle until our burn timer reaches 0. Then cut the throttle quickly to avoid overshooting our target. Okay, get ready to hit the throttle. Watch the burn timer. We want to stop our burn once it reaches 0. Everything. Great work! You've successfully executed a maneuver, and now we're on our way to the Mun. It's going to take a while to reach the Mun, but don't let the wait fool you. We're now moving faster than any Kerbal has ever flown before. When we enter the Mun's sphere of influence, we'll be going way too fast for the Mun's gravity to capture our vehicle. To orbit the Mun, we'll need to burn retrograde once we're inside its SOI, or sphere of influence. This will slow us down enough to keep us from being whipped into interplanetary space. Let's start by time warping until we're within the Mun's sphere of influence. That's the sphere within which the Mun is the primary gravitational influence on your vehicle. Let's get a little bolder with our time warp this time. Farewell, Kerbin! We'll miss you! Welcome to the Mun's sphere of influence. Let's slow down to normal time so we can create a... Did you notice that we've got a periapsis above the Mun, but no apoapsis? That's because we're going too fast to complete an orbit before sailing past the Mun. Don't worry, we have time to adjust. Our objective is to slow down enough so that both apoapsis and periapsis are within the Mun's sphere of influence. Remember the rule of orbital opposites. Because we want to lower your apoapsis, we'll need to place our maneuver plan at the periapsis. Let's get started. In order to reduce our apoapsis, we need to slow down by burning backwards, or retrograde. This is a little like deorbiting over Kerbin, but we're going to stop burning before our trajectory meets Mun dust. Maneuver plan set. Next up, let's make sure we're pointed where we need to be. If the maneuver is right and we're pointed in the right direction, now we need to time warp to the right position. And we're on our way. Almost there. When the countdown reaches 0, throttle up to start your capture burn. Keep burning until the burn timer reaches 0. Shut the engines now. We have an orbit. Fantastic. That was some fancy flying. Looks to me like you're about ready to try this for real.